I Yeah, I would say that the biggest challenge in our online business world is managing schedules around the world. It is the biggest. I For a long time, I had a client in New Zealand, and it was like 18 hours ahead, or sometimes it was 16 hours ahead, and it was like trying to line it all up and keep your brain in that realm is it's quite a challenge. But anyway, how are you, Karen? It's nice to meet you.
Hey, it's nice to meet you too. Let's see, I guess I'm based in Northwest Arkansas, so we've got kind of a it's gonna get warm this week into the 80s. And tell me about where you are and kind of weather out there.
Yeah, so I am in Playa del Carmen in Mexico.
Ooh.
Uh, have you been here?
I have not. I have not.
Or Cancun? Do you know Cancun?
Yeah, no, I mean, not for haven't been there for a long time.
Yes, I live about 45 minutes south of Cancun, Playa del.
Ah, okay.
Yes, it's
Very cool.
lovely. And actually, right now it's really lovely because it's hot. It's the summer, or it's spring, but we live in on the beach, so it's hot
Hmm.
most of the time. But right now it's cool. It's
Ah,
really, it's like refreshing right now.
very
Yes,
nice.
but I have a funny story to tell. Do you know what Neosporin is?
Yes, it's an antibacterial ointment.
That's exactly what it is, and I just cut my finger opening the box of my Neosporin.
Oh, no.
I was opening it because I cut myself shaving because I was rushing, which is a great. We're gonna kind of talk about uh stress and burnout and managing your time and stuff like that, and managing AI and everything. Um, but I thought it was timely because I was rushing to get here because I just got back last night and we're doing laundry and trying to get back into
Mhm.
our little bubble. And then I was rushing to get here on video with you just like 7 minutes ago, and I was opening the box of Neosporin and I cut my finger
Oh,
opening the box.
my.
But
Not good
uh,
to rush.
but how ironic! I cut my finger on the antibiotic point.
It's very safe. Very safe.
Yes. So awesome. Tell us a little bit about you. We just met, so we don't really. For anybody who's following along, Karen and I, we communicate in different ways on the back end here, but we have not met before. Tell us what you do.
Hey, so I on Substack, I write the newsletter Wondering About AI, and it kind of started out as sort of a general look at AI and what it's doing to us at home and at work. And it's kind of evolved into more of like a building in public technology type of blog. And currently, I'm an independent developer, and I am now making my living on custom development projects, which is pretty cool. And I also have a couple of products out there. One of them is called Carousel Bot. It's at carouselbot.app. So here's the ad, and it lets you create LinkedIn carousels and ebooks automatically by just pasting in a link to your article. That's it. That's it. That's all the advertising I'll do.
No problem. Yeah, I mean, like we're all on Substack. I remember I've been on LinkedIn for a long time, and that was kind of my jam. And uh, that somebody said, it's like everybody on LinkedIn is selling something. Everybody, like
Mhm.
all 100 people, 100% of the billion people. So we're none of us are here just for leisure. Some people are. I think there's some retired people that write for leisure, and that's nice. But at the end of the day, it's the new world. This is what we do. Heather Don says, "Very cool, more women in AI," and I agree. It's nice to see more women everywhere. And so I love the idea of the carousel in one click type of thing. So how does that work? Is that's it?
I mean, it's gonna sound crazy, but you get a link to your Substack post or whatever your blog post is, and you could also do this with copy. So if you had a bunch of copy, you could copy paste it. But you just take your link and you go to Carousel Bot. You do create carousel. You put the link in a little window, and you choose the template that you want and decide if you wanna have an AI generated graphic with it. And then you press a button and you wait 35 seconds and you got your carousel. And then you can go in, and if you wanna add more AI generated imagery, you can kind of edit slide by slide and you can look at the copy. But usually, because the copy is really, it's not creating anything new, it's just summarizing and compressing what you have. Usually the copy is not bad. And so it only requires fairly minor tweaking. And then you're done and you export it. And maybe you've spent like 10 minutes of your life on the carousel. And a lot less, at least for me anyway, I found it a lot less painful than going into Canva and picking a template and then kind of manually copy pasting everything in and moving the text around and all that nonsense.
Yeah, and that's a great tool. I don't do them because I have a team that does them, but I know it takes time to do a good one. Well, not as
Mhm.
much time as it used to with all the AI tools, but it takes time. Um, so somebody asked if you could drop the link to your product, or is it's on your profile also, correct?
Yeah, so if you go to my profile, it's carouselbot, all one word, dot app, and it's one of the links on my Substack profile.
Awesome. And so when we reached out, we were like, "What should we talk about?" And I was like, or you suggested stress, and because I talk a lot about burnout, stress, and mindfulness, which actually wasn't really like as big of a word as it is now until 10 or 20 years ago when a need for mindfulness came into being. Because like I was talking about this recently. It's like when I'm 54 years old, and when
Mm,
we were growing up in the 70s, 80s, 90s, it was like the world. We were just mindful. Like we didn't have to stop to be mindful. We weren't consuming short form video 20 hours a day. We were just like observing life and the world around us. Oh, look at that tree. And now it's like we miss the world. And I think AI and technology has a lot to do with that. But we were going to talk about burnout and
mhm.
stress. This was your suggestion, which I love. Burnout and stress surrounding AI adoption. And so, I have my idea of what that means. What does that mean to you?
Well, I think just as a creator who's in the AI space as well as, someone who develops with AI, I'm very personally very conscious of like, okay, what is the latest trend? What is the latest model? What is the latest thing that's been released? Because, readers are, very curious about that, and also, like, from a customer standpoint, if I'm talking to a content agency about building them, like, let's say, like, a back-end content repurposing tool, they wanna know the process, and they wanna know the models, and if I'm up on the latest stuff. Now, I have a message for the CEO of Anthropic, which is this: chill out. Chill out. We have just had like, okay, we have the million, token context window. We have Opus 4.6, Sonnet 4.6. We have skills. We have plugins. We have MCP. We have like pre-built skills and plugins and everything. And they recently changed how to connect with the MCP server. And okay, it's enough. It's enough. And we have that, and then we also have got, things like Perplexity Computer coming out, and we have the latest from the Google image models, and it's a whole lot to take in, and while a lot of this is really cool, I think I think we're spending a lot of time sort of digesting these new advances, and we haven't collectively had enough time to figure out, where do these things really make sense? Where are they actually truly and deeply useful? And not just like another bell or a whistle, or in the case of some skills, it's a structured prompt in a file. So I think we need to have fewer AI or new thing releases. Everybody relax. Let us process.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I also think there's a lot of pressure, I think, to it. Um, you know, going back to the short form video, we're consuming all day long. Everybody's telling you they're selling
Mhm.
their shit. And they're like, use my app, use this app, use this. This is going to improve this. This is going to improve that. But it's like, we don't need all those things. And I think, you know, I, whenever there's a stress or anxiety or whatever you want to get into, it's usually because I'm not in alignment with who I am and what I'm supposed to be doing and what the world is doing and all those things. And like, we don't need, and well, first of all, our brains can't handle all this technology, like all the capabilities of every tool and app and technology that's out there. Our brains are still, pretty much designed to like eat berries in a cave. And so it's cool that all this stuff exists and it's supposed to extend our life, which it does, and it makes our lives more efficient. But I think trying to keep up with all of them at the same time is, first of all, impossible unless it's what you do for a living.
Mm.
If you do that for a living and you have time 20 hours a day to just study and experiment with every tool out there, but if you have kids and a life and
Mhm.
clients and you want to exercise and live a healthy life, it's impossible to do that. And I think one of the things I talk about, and tell me your opinion, is having like a couple tools, go deep on them, set your business up, and make sure that the tools you're using are in alignment with what you're trying to do. Most of them you could do with 2 or 3 tools tops. You have to look at your tech stack. We do a tech stack audit every quarter now, because
Mm.
you're like, "Oh, look at this one, $5. Look at this one, $20. Look at this one, $80. Look at this one." And all of a sudden you're spending $500 on apps and you use 2.
Mm.
Uh, So I think it's important for people to understand you don't have to do that. And what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, I know people who they're using Gemini, they're using Notion, they're using Claude for some things, they still have a Chat GPT subscription, they're using Recraft, they're using all of these different things, and I think it makes a lot of sense to pick one ecosystem to be your primary, home. I've picked Claude because, I've thought that the Claude models are especially good in terms of content generation, and they've seen relatively thoughtfully designed. So I'm starting with Claude and then I'm adding on. I do use like Google image models, and I pretty much interact with everything via API. So I think context switching is one thing that is a big issue when you have multiple AI tools. So what I try to do is I'm like, okay, I'm just going to be in Claude Code all day, and then I'm connecting everything else to Claude Code so that I can have images generated, and I can do whatever I want through the one interface with the one tool, and even automating some of it and not having to bounce around between different UIs, because I think that's where a lot of time suck comes from.
It does, yeah. And so it sounds like, have you read the book Deep Work? Do you know about Deep Work?
Let's see. I've heard the title, but I'll be honest, I haven't read the book.
It's really good. I recommend it. I have all my clients read it. It's called Deep Work by Cal Newport, and it's all about how it takes us on average. They say people with that are super intelligent with super high IQs and high levels, high capability of focus, like doctors, lawyers,
Mhm.
surgeons, scientists, those people that can really focus, and maybe the developers, IT programmers, they have a maximum output of 3 to 4 hours a day. So like this whole model that we've had for 200 years of sitting in an office
Mhm.
for 8 to 10 hours a day, it's really unproductive, and nobody is productive. Nobody for 8 to 10 hours a day. So they talk about that. The rest of us normal people like me, us dummies, we're about 1 to 2 hours of maximum output a day. So the idea when you go to sleep, when you wake up in the morning, the idea is you're supposed to be fully charged. And then you wake up and start watching short form video and getting angry about politics and stuff, and you're burning yourself out. And then you go to work for your 1 or 2 hours of maximum output and you're fried. And so we're not getting everything done. And then you start context switching, like you said, well, look
Mhm.
at this app, look at this app, look at this app. And all of a sudden we're watching giraffes play with kittens on Instagram reels, and our lives are not advancing. We're not making money in our business. We're like, what happened? So focusing on like 1 or 2 things at a time is
Mhm.
really vital to really make progress. Your goals too. Everybody has their impossible to do list of 30 things. and you sit down and do that, first of all, it's impossible to do 30 things at a high level, so you keep bumping them off. And then also you have notifications on, but if you just have 1 or 2 things that you need to do, maybe 3 for the day, and do those, only those, turn off your notifications. I'm a pretty successful guy, I'm really busy, and I've had my notifications off for, like, 4 years, 0 notification. So, it's the only way to really continually make progress. And so, I also switched to Claude recently. I was using, Gemini because I everything I do is on Google. I have the whole suite of Google Workspace, but then I started playing with Claude a couple months ago, and I was like, "It's so far superior to
Mm.
other things." That's what I found. You too?
Yeah, I mean, especially and even I was gonna say from a hallucination standpoint, but honestly, if I there are, some hallucination measurements, and I think Claude is fairly, consistent with the other models in terms of how often it hallucinates. I think it frames its results, and this could also partly be how I prompt it, but it's usually framing its results as, "Hey, here's some information that you can then go validate." So I feel like in a lot of cases, it's maybe less confident than some of the other models, which from my standpoint is a good thing. But I wanted to pick up on what you were saying about the short form videos that, I'm a parent and I've got an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old, and I'm way less concerned with them playing video games or getting on, like, a multiplayer game with their friends than I am about the endless YouTube Shorts because 'cause they'll get into a loop and they can't stop, and it's designed to be addictive, and so that's the one thing that I'm really careful about. We have some hard bans with YouTube Shorts.
Yeah, and it's not even our fault. Like, they're designed that. They know that. That's why all the social media platforms, even LinkedIn, they've been trying to for the last few years to move to video. Not the engagement wasn't the same, so they're still, like, it's a slow transition, but they are trying to shift to it because they know once they have you hooked, you're there. And the
Mm.
whole idea of social media platforms from their standpoint is to keep people on the social media platform. So you do that by short short form video that have hooks. They're designed to trip off the dopamine and keep you engaged for hours at a time, and it just sucks life away.
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, it's interesting because sometimes the model of a lot of these platforms and even the AI platforms, everything that you're using, it wants to keep you engaged. So, Claude or ChatGPT, it ends everything like, "Would you like me to build this? Would you like me to research this?
Right, that's
Like
right.
this?" And so you may knock out your 1 or 2 things, the important things for the day, and then maybe you wanna move on to something kind of mindless or, you're gonna go for a run or whatever, and it is actively trying to keep you at your desk. And, when the healthier approach, I think, is like as you said, you have your list, you have your priorities, you knock out your priorities, then you close the machine and you move on, you know?
Close. Yeah, and it's hard. It is hard. And everything the reason we're distracted, like I said before, it's not even our fault. Like, it's designed to keep you in the loop. So if you're not aware, awareness is always the first step. So if you don't have the awareness that you're sucked into it, which most people don't, then that's what you do all day. And you keep returning back to it too, because even if you're and it's breaking up relationships, it's ruining work
Mhm.
and success because it's like, even if you can pull your head out and go engage with your husband or wife, you're not even there because you're thinking about the giraffes and the kittens. And then when you get away, the first thing you do is you grab your phone. The average person spends 23 hours, 50 minutes within arm's
Mm.
reach of their phone, right?
Yeah, well, I think the other thing in terms of the pace of AI news that sort of contributes to it is if you're at all in kind of the technology space, there's this sense of fear of missing out. There's a FOMO factor. So you almost feel guilty, turning away from it and saying like, "Okay, I'm just not gonna look at this. I'm gonna put it down because like there could be some, incredible development that you need to be aware of. And then you're going to be on a client call and they mention it and then you have no idea what they're talking about. So I think it creates a little bit of a FOMO and even a little bit of fear around, well, if you don't keep up with this stuff, then you're going to be, you're going to be obsolete, you're going to lose business. And I think AI, its narrative at least has actually been fairly destructive in terms of the economy, both when we're looking at, people with regular jobs, as well as people who are doing freelancing or their own business or their own company, because it's it's added a huge element of uncertainty to a lot of decision making, and I think it makes it difficult. It makes it difficult to plan if you're a person and you're just like, am I going to get laid off next month? I can't tell. I don't know what's happening. And the same thing in terms of like, okay, so maybe you've released an app, but you don't know if some giant Anthropic is going to come along and decide that it's next focus area. There's just extra uncertainty, I feel like, built into most things that we're doing right now to make money that can be traced back to AI.
And so what do you think is the solution? Is it like, all right, stay aware and then do your daily mindfulness stuff to stay
Mhm.
focused on what you're doing? Or do you think it's like, uh, do you think it's more tech related? Do you think it's an emotional mindset that we need to have?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more of like a mindset and kind of managing fear and emotions around that uncertainty, because ultimately, if you stay engaged with it, I mean, you're gonna get fried, and so I think in this environment, it's actually even more important to be able to kind of step away from it, and also to really keep your specific personal goals in mind in terms of what you're trying to achieve, because it's much easier to be distracted by, "Oh, I've gotta go follow this new thread here, because if I don't, something could happen." But it's really it's just distracting you from your mission.
It is. And I think that we're talking about technology, but I think it's an, it's a productivity, um, trait. I can't think of the right word right now because I'm still like traveling my brain. But I think it's habits that we build. It's a lifestyle that we live to where we have to be mindful of our job, and stay ahead of the technology that's trying to steal our attention. Everything we do is trying to steal our attention. The media, the politics, everything, it's all marketing. I study marketing for a living. Like
Mm.
I tell you all about what's happening. Like the reason the election results were the way they were, like they had marketing teams. Like when you look at if you look at Facebook, which 3 billion people do, you look at that and it's like you see all these memes and everything on there. And who do you think made them? It's not like some stay-at-home mom that's making memes that about this candidate or this candidate. It's their marketing teams pumping these things out
Mhm.
and causing anger and division. That's what's happening.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are my understanding is that there are indeed kind of like bot farms, and there are influence peddling firms that, that what if one is a politician, you can outsource a lot of this meme generation. But my husband was chatting with me about Facebook, and I actually haven't been on it for years. And he is telling me like, "Oh, well, it has gone from more of like a find your friends, chit chat about what's going on in the, local community. And it's really gone into this whole like TikTok like experience where the algorithm is serving you up a lot of, junk food content, junk food usually. And you have to scroll and scroll and scroll to actually find the people that you are looking for. And I think this idea, like the sort of math produced content and this algorithmic approach to business, it's really interesting because I feel like a lot of AI productivity tools are geared towards a really specific business model, which is volume and scale, and also repeatability. So if you have a really concrete offer and a really concrete ideal customer, then you can kind of buy and I don't do this, this is bad. But you buy an email list and you hook it up to, you hook it up to your outreach back end, and it can auto generate X number of emails with different variants of copy optimized for response rate. And as long as you don't get banned by anyone, um, you can make the numbers work. So you can be like, okay, well, if I'm going to get like a 1% response rate for my horrible offer, you can still make money off it, and it's but if you don't work that way, if you're not looking at scale and volume, then in some ways a lot of the AI productivity isn't helpful. Like if I am doing outreach on LinkedIn, I do it very seldom, and when I do, I'm making, I might send like one or two DMs a week, and I will build a custom demo for the person, and I will make sure that I have deeply researched, you know, what they're up to, so that I'm sending something that makes a lot of sense. But building a custom demo for a single individual is not something that is I can plug into like a mass production tool. It's something that I am working with Claude to help me with code syntax. But in terms of like what this thing is going to do and why it's valuable for this particular person, and all of that is generally has to be human research.
It does, and I think it depends on the business model too. I mean,
Mhm.
like, there's, if you're trying to sell, uh, print on demand T-shirts, and you just want to drop ship them, you don't want to talk to people. You want to sell a million T-shirts every day. So those things you automate. But if you're trying to have a human based relationship, you can't automate that. And I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've done so many different things, and I've done the spam bombs and bought
Mm.
email lists and send out 120,000, it's 120,000 emails a month we were sending out. And this was like 5, 6 years ago. And I can't even say that it did work. Yes, of course, you make money doing that. But if you're trying to build a relationship based human business,
Mm.
establish a name for yourself, that model it's not really recommended. You started it out the right way. You're like, don't do this. Uh, but you can buy the list. Like there's different business models. I think that, you know, uh, in our AI microwave automated world that we live in right now, the best approach, because I have been doing this 20 years. 20 years ago, if you had a website, you were like, wow, that's amazing.
Oh,
This
yeah.
was a huge business. But now if you had any type of technology, now that what sets you apart now is a human connection. And if you have a high ticket business model, which is anything, it depends, 1,000, five
Mhm.
thousand or more, you need to have a human touch. And if you could do that, you're going to be more successful than eventually than
Mhm.
everyone else, I think.
Yeah, and I guess it really depends on kind of the because I think this if you have a service business, it makes it's really important to have that relationship side of things, and that actually becomes a lot more important than the technology. And there's just in my experience, there's a whole lot that like you can try to automate it, but it's not going to actually be good for you. Like if you're sending update emails to people that you've worked with, then write the email yourself, and don't put it on an auto drip where Claude is writing it on the back end based on sort of like the database records of your business activities, because people will see through that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that there's certain, like, look, people on here are trying to ask us things about this stuff. And it's like,
Mm.
I don't think remember, the reason AI won't replace humans is that we are nuanced. There's a nuance to us that you can't duplicate. And I think, I don't think it's ever going to happen. I think there are certain things that it will replace, and that's great. It's supposed to make our lives more efficient.
Mhm.
Just like the washing machine replaced us having to scrub on a washboard, right? But there are some things that I can automate for my business that you can't, because it wouldn't make sense for
Mhm.
you, Karen. And then there are some things that Juan can automate that won't make sense for us. So it's not, I think people are trying to listen to us talk because we're maybe quote unquote successful. What are they doing? I need to do that. Well, what I'm doing might not work for you. But if we talk about some tools that you can explore and learn, you might find something that works for your business model. And I think that's where a lot of people are getting lost in this AI boom. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think automation has to be really carefully evaluated, and it has to be really personalized to your own work process. So you have to, and I think the hardest part, because like, now I'm at a point where like, okay, so now I have a pretty good idea in terms of what works for me and what I can, what I can explore, and other things that, don't work for me, like Google Ads doesn't work for me. But but I think everybody has to test out a lot of different things. And I think if you're exploring and you're trying to figure out what automation is going to support my business, especially if it's a new business and you're just trying to get your first couple of clients. I think it makes sense to limit the experiments, to prioritize a few different things to test and examine each week, and also to make sure that you're collecting enough data on each strategy to know whether or not it's truly valuable. Because you could do something like, okay, you send 10 DMs to people on LinkedIn with your offer, and they all say no, or they all just ignore you. And you can easily conclude, well, that strategy is just trash. But you don't have enough data. You've only tried 10 people out of a whole universe of people. So I feel like there needs to be that balance in terms of like, okay, you've got to try something enough to know if you have a statistically valid sample, to know if it really doesn't work for you or if it's really inefficient. And then, you give it a fair shake, something doesn't work. Okay, move on to the next thing. And so there has to be that balance between giving up too fast and then spending too much time and energy and money on a strategy that just isn't effective for you. And
Yeah.
that really drawing that line is very challenging.
Yeah. I agree 100%. Michelle is like, as business owners, we need to always have to put everything through a filter of, does this work for me? Right. And a lot of people forget to do that and don't trust themselves enough to do that. And I like what you were talking about is data. Like, years ago, there wasn't all this data available that there is now. And I think the idea of being an entrepreneur or a solopreneur or an online business, it's really sexy thought. Like everybody loves to throw that around. I'm an entrepreneur, but it's really hard. Building a stable, profitable business is really one of the hardest things you'll ever do. And if you don't know how to, I mean, there's really talented doctors and lawyers, accountants, and smart people that start their own businesses and fail because they don't know how to run a business. They're different things. And so I think if you don't know how to analyze the data, which is much easier to do now because they give you so much data. But then it goes, then there's so much data, which applies to me? Which one do I need to look at? But years ago, like we didn't have all the data available. You know why Netflix is so um, successful and they're really one of the most amazing companies is because Reed Hastings, he was an analyst. Like he studied data. So when Netflix creates content, which they spend almost $20 billion a year creating content, it's based on data. It's based on
Mhm.
analytics. They already know that we're going to like it before they make it because they studied the data. And now, if you study the data of what's working, Substack gives you all the data you need,
Mhm.
uh, mostly. And all these social platforms do. You can go in and see how your users behave and then do more of that if it's working. If it's not working, then redirect. And I think people keep trying to
Mhm.
force some type of outcome that isn't in alignment with who they are, or maybe they don't even know how to do that, but they saw somebody else doing it.
And Substack is an interesting beast because it's kind of it's sort of part of, partially a business model, partially a social platform. There's a partly like an email platform. So it's a lot of things kind of bundled together. And I feel like sometimes it's easy to get caught up in the vanity metrics of Substack in terms of like, oh, if you might be really concerned about, do I have X number of paid subscribers? Am I on the rising list? Do I have enough free subscribers? And you can easily compare yourself to other creators. And I feel like in some cases it's like you have to take a step back and think like, okay, so if you're participating in Substack, are you doing it for personal fulfillment because you're just meeting some cool people? In which case, like do we ignore or turn off the metrics? Just don't pay attention to them, or are you doing it to support a business? And then in which case, okay, are you looking for lead generation? Are you actually looking to make an income from the subscriptions? And then you have to kind of develop your strategy accordingly. Where for me, I kind of look at it where I started out, with paid subscribers as just more of a curiosity thing. And then I was doing weekly workshops, and I realized that I was giving my Substack subscribers who were paying $5 a month more effort and work than I was giving to the people who were actually paying me for custom development and other things like that. And so I was like, all right, this is silly. So I restructured the offer so that now I'm wondering about AI for paid subscribers. We're doing a monthly build project. And so that everybody who wants to, I have a detailed set of specifications for, okay, here's some different things you can build. And then at the end of this month, we'll have our first monthly build, and I will write a giant article sharing everybody's projects and not my, just everybody who participated. And I'm curious to see how this plays out. But at least for me, this is more sustainable. And I think also even more sustainable for my subscribers because a weekly workshop is a lot. That's a huge time commitment. And it's not a recorded workshop that isn't like digested into like the most important parts. That's not even that useful, I think. So I'm trying to offer something through Substack that people can engage with asynchronously that's not going to burn up their time and won't burn up my time either.
Yeah, and that's really smart. Like everybody should listen to this. Is like if something is not working, stop doing that. And if something's working, keep going down that path. And if you realize, it's like you don't want to quit. Like I always start all my clients, whether it's I've worked with some very high level people, and I've worked with early stage solopreneurs and
Mm.
entrepreneurs, and I always start the same way. What's your vision? What's the goal? Now you can have multiple visions. Your visions can change, but you have to have a starting point. What am I doing? Why am I getting out of bed? And it's like, this is my goal. This is my vision. And we have to move towards that. And it's what I'm doing right now, getting me closer to my vision right now, whatever it is you're doing. If it is, keep doing that. And if it's not, then stop doing that and do something else that's going to get you closer to your vision. And so I think a lot of people quit because the idea of the vision is exciting. It's like euphoric, the dopamine, the
Mm.
endorphins, everything. And we want to go do it. The $10 million, the Ferrari, the beach martinis, all those things. And then the next day we're like, wow, that's hard. And so we quit or we try something different and we keep doing that and we don't get anywhere. And I think it's okay to pivot. Like what you were talking about is like, okay, let's do this. Oh my God, I'm attracting people, but it's not the right business model. So
Mhm.
let's adapt. And you have to be able to pivot and adapt. And that's what the most successful people can do. They know how. They can recognize what's going on. You have to see what's working, what's not working, and move accordingly instead of just keep doing this thing and maybe I'll get these subscribers or enough business and all these things. And so there's more that goes into it all. So I like speaking frankly and honestly about everything. I'm not like uh, you know, make about $1 million a month in your underwear, working 1 hour a day on your phone, watching Netflix. I hate those things. In fact, I have groups on the back end that I run. I have lots of people in my world.
Mm.
And whenever I see those ads, I paste them into the group. I say, don't buy that shit because they're lying. They're business models. You can run $100,000 a month in paid ads on Facebook. It's a business model. People do it, and you can make $110,000, and you made $10,000 that month. And just like you set up
Mhm.
automated processes like we were talking about, it's highly risky. Like, if you don't know how to do that, don't do that.
Mm.
But it's a business model that works, but it's this whole one size fits all thing is where people are getting lost, I think.
Yeah. I think the other thing, 'cause I know that you're based in Mexico and that in terms of for those of us who are based in the US, another thing that is super, super challenging if you're starting a business is healthcare. Because I have got a family, got a family of 4. I have one of my children has a chronic medical condition, and so making sure that you're able to, like, afford health insurance is a huge thing, and actually, I'm probably heading down the road of trying to sort of, move from sole proprietor to being incorporated and to be able to actually buy corporate healthcare, like a corporate healthcare package so that I can put my family on it because the health insurance options on the US, care exchange are really bad. They're so
Uh,
bad. And I mean, this is like the not fun part of being a solopreneur, and I ended up here because, maybe about 9 months ago, I had a long-term stable, job with a marketing agency that they went out of business. And so and looking at the market, I would have gotten a full-time job with healthcare if that was something that was actually doable for me. But nope. So this is definitely, and I feel like I'm fairly representative. I think there are a lot of folks out there who are in kind of the same situation where, I've been fortunate because I've been, over the past couple of months, things have finally come together and I have finally have paying customers, which is a wonderful thing. But, it's definitely, I'd say, a challenging road, and I would say to be really cognizant of your own personal situation, especially when it comes to just being able to, afford healthcare for your family, and that sometimes that makes, you know, maybe it makes sense to have your kind of dream entrepreneurial thing be a side hustle because you gotta keep your health insurance, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you said that. So one of the things I'm doing, this is my little pitch for people that are watching. I'm taking on 100 people at $99 for
Mm,
4 one-on-one meetings with me. And one of the things I hope everybody listening hops on because I charge lots of money for what I do, and I guide people through setting up businesses, branding, marketing, all that stuff. And I've been doing it for a long time. But one of the things I go over and I tell people right away is don't quit your job. I say that. I'm like, I'm very honest about everything, and I also tell people if it's a bad idea, their idea,
mhm.
bad idea, or I'm more tactful about it, but I could like guide you to the point where you see it. I've been doing a lot of coaching. I've been sober for a long 23 years. I used to do a lot of that. My job isn't to tell you do this or don't do that. It's to prompt you to find your own answers and your own solutions. One thing I do say is don't quit your job because I see a lot of people that get excited about the beach martinis and the Ferrari and and the 4 hour work week. Like I all these books out there, there's no 4 hour work week. I love Tim Ferriss. I think he's smart, but it's gonna take more than 4 hours a week
Mhm.
and you're not gonna make a stable income right away, if ever. I mean, it's really hard. So you really need to know what you're doing. Don't quit your job. Have a really good plan and vision and have accountability. Have coaches in your life. Another thing about the all the tools that are available, if you don't know how to use them, ask for help.
Mhm.
And all these things, I was taught years ago, have an expert in every area of your life. Like if I have to go to court, I need a lawyer. If I get sick, I need a doctor. Some doctors. But if I hate doing taxes, I need an accountant to do my taxes or I'll get in trouble. And so there's certain things I don't know how to do. And if I ask for help, I'll get there faster.
Mhm.
Before Google Maps and Waze and all these things, we used to have to ask directions. And there was a stereotype that men didn't like to stop or ask for directions. I always stopped to ask for directions. I was like, I would rather look like an idiot for a couple minutes and get there in 5 minutes than drive around for 2 hours trying to get there. How do you feel about these things?
I mean, I have an accountant and I just I hate tax and administration and with my, with Carousel Bot, well, it's not, well, I'd love it to make money. It doesn't make that much money right now, and I'm using something called Lemon Squeezy on the back end just because I don't wanna deal with sales tax. I don't wanna think about sales tax. I don't wanna try to worry if I've got a tax nexus in some, like, random state somewhere that I've gotta care about. I'll care about that when I could hire somebody to manage that aspect of things, but right now I'm using a merchant of record, so they just take care of all of the sales tax, and all of that stuff is done on the back end. And I think that when you're starting, I think also expertise is expensive. And so I think if you can afford expertise, you should get expertise. But if you can't afford it, that's actually where our friendly large language models can help up to a point. That you have to be really cautious about how you prompt them, but you can run ideas by them and you can, as long as you're prompting them to be pretty critical, you can get some reasonable feedback out of them. Now, I would say way, way better to actually talk to a human expert. But if you are in that startup phase and you are broke but you can afford, you got your $20 Claude subscription or whatever it is, then that is a starting place, at least to help weed out the bad ideas and to figure out, okay, I'm thinking of like 5 to 10 things that I want to try. How do I prioritize them? And, there are lots of resources on Substack in terms of being able to prompt a language model in a way that won't get it just kind of rooting for you and like saying yes to everything. You need it to come at things from a more critical perspective.
I agree. And I have what I call my own personal board of advisors. And I have, if you were to look at my Google, which I need to change the cloud, but I have in my Google Gemini, I have gems. I have a business strategist. I have a
Mhm.
therapist that combines combines stoicism with all psychology and I have all these different strategists that I check in with pretty regularly. Like, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? I have a copywriting strategist that I set up too. And yeah, and there's also YouTube, right? So, I mean, like people, this is a huge debate all the time with
Mm.
is college, a college degree necessary? If you're going to be a doctor, lawyer, degree specific profession, and you have resources, then go to college, right? But if not, like it depends on what you're trying to do. Pretty much, it's all available somewhere if you look hard enough for free, and you can look on YouTube. Uh,
Mhm.
you can prompt AI. AI is great, the large language models, because you can ask the large language models how to use their own tool. That's
Mm.
cool. Like,
Mhm.
how do I prompt you to help me do this outcome? Right? Do you do that?
Yeah, although sometimes what's interesting is that they may not have their own latest specs in their training data. So that's always kind of hilarious when it doesn't understand its own capabilities. So you actually will need to a lot of times if you're looking at you want to know exactly what Claude code can do, you can tell Claude Code to go research its specifications and Anthropic's documents, and then it'll know.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. I mean, there's so many things that we could do. I mean, so what do you think is like the starting point for people that are starting out? I mean, there were people in the earlier in the conversation, somebody was like, do either of you have a top five list? This is Michelle, a top five list of what AI you use for each type of project work context, i.e., content creation versus strategy, research, graphic design? I mean, I think people are looking that's what people are looking for. And like we kind of addressed it. It's not a one size fits all. Like I might use this for this and this for this, but
Hmm.
neither of those things will work for you. So
Yeah,
where do
I
you think is a good starting point for people that are like looking for those types of solutions?
Well, it's interesting because if I were to answer that question, it would be Claude, 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 and Nano Banana. So I would say that if your workflows or if you're doing a lot of visuals, if you're super heavy on, if graphics are the most important thing in what you're working on, the Google platform would make the most sense because then you can access Nano Banana, you can access VO. That those tools are really, I think the best options out there if visuals are your top priority. For everything else, Claude.
I agree. Yeah, it does the research for you, and then I also think, I mean, it's been my experience. The the output, the content, the just the whole delivery is just a different level above what Gemini and ChatGPT was able to give me. But I am also, I tell people I am not an AI guru, and like I don't think there really are any gurus out there. It's all 3 years old. Like guru really implies decades of expertise in some sort of topic. So I don't know about gurus. I mean, I think there's really smart people out there that understand it way better than me. But I can tell you practical applications that I use. And as somebody who's been doing it for a few years, but I'm a business guy, like I can tell you all about the foundations of marketing, branding, and business, but I can't tell you how to develop a website or I have a team that does that stuff. But
Now
uh,
the other thing that I would chime in here with is there's this temptation because I've seen so many articles about automated AI research pipeline, get more AI research when you sleep, research, and there's a real danger of just having too much information. So I actually am I use AI for some research, but I do it really sparingly because I think one of the dangers of using a lot of AI is you can actually end up with just too much information and it's just gonna make it even more difficult to make decisions. So I think you need the right information, you need the right amount of information, and I don't think for most business people, I don't think you need to unless you're in, like, a news-driven content delivery kind of business, you don't need Claude or some other AI sitting up all night checking the news and giving you, like, a giant brain dump every morning. That's just too much.
it is, and I think that's what happens with hallucinations. Like with the prompting, like I was doing this. I think it was yesterday or something. Like on the plane, I was asking something, and I think if you go too deep on your prompt, like there's a difference between having a well structured, relevant prompt and going too deep on it to where it confuses the
Mm.
model also. And then it gives you an output that isn't even what you were looking for. And I think that's a kind of apropos to like, yeah, you don't have to do so much research. I mean, I mean, research is like, you're right. It depends on what level. If you're a scientist trying to, find a hypothesis for some sort of equation, you have to go deep on it. But for the most of us, it's like we can get most of the research done pretty quickly uh, with the tools that are available. You do, and then keep moving forward with whatever it is, going towards your goals and your visions and your dreams. That's my opinion.
Yeah. I think we're living in interesting times, and I think AI can definitely be helpful, but I think we need to keep it in its place. And in terms of prompting, the one thing that I will mention is that it's kind of like a person. It's going to pay more attention to what's at the beginning of your prompt and what's at the end of your prompt. And if you have a whole lot of stuff in the middle, it is actually it's going to mathematically, it's discounting a lot of that stuff. So the more concise that you can be, the better. And but just keep in mind, it's like it's the beginning of the prompt it's paying a lot of attention to, and the end. And the stuff in
Mhm.
the middle can get missed a lot.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that specifically, but it totally makes sense. I think that's great. So, what's the best way to get in touch with Kat?
I'm pretty good about responding to my Substack DMs. And then if you're a subscriber to Wondering About AI, if you just respond, just email back like any of the the articles, I'll respond. That's Karen at wonderingabout.ai. And then if you're curious about Carousel Bot, Karen at carouselbot.app. But Yeah, I'm always happy to hear from folks and answer questions.
Awesome. I'm gonna have one of my designers look at that because we create carousels. Maybe we'll use it too. I
Yeah, and
don't
also
even.
it also creates ebooks now.
Ooh, really? Yeah, I know that that's a good thing, but I think there's are there a lot of those out there too?
Yeah, well, what's interesting, I think the closest thing to Carousel Bot is something called Gamma, and Gamma kind of its sweet spot is presentations, and it also will do carousels and documents, but I find it's got 2 major problems, and one is that the AI imagery it picks is usually kinda not good, and it's challenging to edit out, and then it also isn't designed like, it's trying to get everybody to use its native, document and presentation viewer, and so it's not so great, like, when you're exporting to, like, a PowerPoint or a PDF or a PNG, the output quality can be really sketchy, and so with Carousel Bot, I've worked really hard to make sure that we've got quality output, so if you're getting a PDF, if it looks good on screen, you're gonna see exactly the same thing in your PDF, and that makes it at least in my opinion, a lot more usable. I'm gonna do a video with, like, a head-to-head comparison with Gamma to show the differences.
Awesome. Yeah, and somebody said, "Can you put your website to Carousel Bot in the chat, please?" So definitely do that. And anybody who's here, one last pitch for me. I'm helping 100 people at $99 for 4 sessions one-on-one with me. If that sounds exciting to you, please reach out. I have already have, I think, 12 spots taken, so I still have a bunch to go, but I'm looking forward to working with y'all. Karen, it was a pleasure meeting with you. Any closing arguments? Anybody?
I I mean, the only thing
Karen?
I would just say is take care of yourself, that there's a lot of, there's a lot of AI tools and news and everything out there in the world, and starting a business is really hard, so just take care of yourself, take the time you need to keep yourself sane because ultimately that's the most important thing.
It is, and I love that you close that way. And I also say, take your time, but also make sure you like what you're doing. Not just because it sounds cool because somebody else did it on Instagram or even on Substack or whatever. It's like, make sure you're doing something that you love to do. Steve Jobs, who wasn't a great human, but he was a brilliant entrepreneur. He was like, the vision pulls you. I think you shouldn't have to push so hard in life. It's like people are trying to like make the square peg fit into the round hole, and it's like if it's not in alignment with who you are and what you love to do, you're gonna quit and it's gonna be hard. And so I would say just make sure you love what you're doing, and if you keep moving in that direction, then you're gonna have a nice life and a successful business eventually. Don't quit your job. But anyway, thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you, Karen. It's a pleasure meeting you. You're wonderful. And thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you so much. It was great being here.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.